Alexa,
Alexa,
start
Alexa,
Endgame.
start
Endgame.
Start the Endgame.
Oh, that must have been confusing.
So, welcome to Endgame.
All right, is the camera over here, or is that what I'm looking at?
Yes, welcome to Endgame. We
Yes,
all now...
welcome.
Wait, so
Okay,
how many people?
Hi, welcome everyone.
Oh, I'm getting an audio delay. Weird. I'm getting a feedback from what just happened. Oh,
Oh, I'm sure.
Almost like
Just made it.
I have the.
Okay, I'm gonna get started.
Yeah, I had the YouTube
Oh,
video
you-
playing, so I
you
heard
had
all of
the
us say
the
Alexa
stream
start
playing.
Endgame a second time, and I was like, why is this happening? But yeah.
Okay, well, a little bit of confusion, but that's okay. Welcome to Endgame. Today we are talking about artificial intelligence. I have a couple slides here to get us started. We've talked about AI, and technology is a pretty common topic for us. But this paper came out recently, and so I wanted to talk about it because, well, it's not really a paper. It is like they created a diagram, and also there's a 21-part essay that goes along with it, and it's very in-depth, very thorough look, as thorough as they could get, I think, for now. A very thorough look at what exactly goes into an AI system. And I thought it would be a good topic because, it's something we're talking about quite a bit. Like, AI is kind of seen as the potential for what we can achieve someday, and we talk a lot about it, and possibly the robot uprising, and whatever's going to happen with AI in the future. Let me pull up my notes real quick.
I'm really excited about this topic because I think it's so impactful as well. And also, when you brought it up, when you mentioned this idea of talking about it, you brought up this, or the essay, I guess, brought up this idea that that AI has more costs than we realize necessarily, and that's what interested me the most.
Right.
But also, I wanted to just quickly ask about the people who said Alexa. When we said Alexa, I know you have an Alexa. I don't have one, so I'm actually comfortable saying Alexa. And I noticed that it's like the censored word when we're talking. Sometimes it's like, don't say Alexa because it's. But I'm curious, like, how many of us have an Alexa or kind of Google Home or anything like that in our...
thumbs up if you have some kind of personal assistant, something or another, like Google Home or Alexa or something like that. Okay, it's fairly common.
Yeah, it's about
getting more
half,
and more
I would say,
common,
like that.
I think. Yeah, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah.
So
a lot of people have this.
Yeah, right. It's getting very common, and that's kind of part of the interesting thing about it is how the human population, like, it's kind of being recruited into this entire system process. So this whole thing right here, this is the full diagram put together by Kate Crawford of New York University and Vladen Joler of the University of Novi Sad, and it is a map of what it takes to make the Amazon Echo function. And they said to read it, and you can't, it's high resolution, so you can go check out the PDF. But basically, from left to right is the kind of the geological process, and then from the top to down is kind of the human process. And then, basically, there's a lot of pieces here, but you can kind of go step by step and look at them, and they all fit together and make sense. But the essay starts off with describing the simple scenario of telling Alexa to do something. Like, you say, Alexa, turn on the light, and it's, she says okay, and the light turns on, and oh, it's so simple and everything. And this is the diagram of the Echo Dot, but it is not a full diagram of the Echo Dot.
And the dot, what is the dot? It's the lowest. Is that the cheapest Amazon device or something?
It's the cheaper one.
In it.
Yeah, it can I mean, it can do everything that the bigger one can do. Its speakers aren't as good. Maybe there's a couple other features, but basically this houses Alexa. But then there's more to that system, right? So like, in addition to all the individual little components that make the Echo Dot work, there's also the entire infrastructure of Amazon and the infrastructure of the internet and the submarine cables that provide internet to the entire world. And there's I forget which, like there's all the data that goes in, the data and labor that goes into making all this happen. And there's the knowledge base that goes into things like speech recognition and things like that. And this is just a fraction still of the entire picture. That first one that we saw, but basically, the first thing that it talks about is how like the energy and the resources that it takes for the Echo to turn off a light is just magnitudes times more than it takes a human to walk across a room and turn on the light.
And how did they calculate? Like, I guess one question I have is that yes, the internet cables and stuff like that have a lot of like resources that go into creating them, but how did they account for one instance of someone asking Amazon to turn off the lights? How do they calculate that that's more energy than getting up and running? Or like, what is that? What do they mean, I guess, by that?
I mean, as far as I can tell, like the hard numbers there are kind of they're difficult to find. I mean, for a lot of different reasons, and so they don't get into quantification too much. But they do like kind of pull out some of the kind of the pieces of what goes into it, because because it's also hard to quantify like how much energy a human takes to turn on that light, right? Because we are a composite of a bunch of resources that have gone into us as well. And there's the power grid and the electrical system. There's still all that is, but the I guess just the energy that at the very least, like regardless of the quantification, the energy and resources that allow a machine to do it are very different than the energy and resources that allow a human to do it, I think.
Yeah. And that has implications, especially if people like Amazon want everyone to have an Echo, or Google, once everyone has like an Echo and a Google Home and everything, like it's
Right.
basically it's basically the two options of either we all turn on our lights manually or we all turn on. That's kind of like what this
Right.
is kind of comparing, I guess. Yeah.
And they do want everyone to have one of those, and we'll get into that. Starting to get into that a little bit. The kind of one of the themes of the Arzeus, did you have a comment?
So I actually work in the field of home automation.
Okay.
And like as far as we have clients that call in. We sell security systems, but B, our main goal, and because security systems and home automation is becoming so intertwined, a lot of times we are making sales to customers with training them to teach their Amazon Alexa to be able to run instances when they wake up, to be able to turn the lights on, turn the coffee maker on, turn all of this on. And a lot of the experts in our field are believing that within 20 years, all homes will be considered smart home, quote unquote, smart homes, meaning you wake up and with one breath, your entire home is starting stuff while you're in the shower, There's entire Reddit boards dedicated to opening doggy doors, turning coffee makers on, turning lights on, and it's one of those things that as the stuff becomes more complex, it's becoming cheaper because of the amount of competition and stuff.
And it's like it reminds me kind of that Disney movie about the smart home. I don't know if anyone remembers that, where like the home turns on the people inside, or something like that.
I have never heard of that.
It was like smart. I think it's called like Smart Home or something like that. But it was like they lived in the smart home that.
No,
it was a Disney movie.
It was. The main plot of the movie is like the mom died and like the family replaced the mom with like the home automation. It took a hologram of the mom and
No,
and it
when
turns on them though.
It's like your house, that was a smart house.
Yes,
wow.
And that's exactly, I guess, Arzeus has a really awesome point and input, and I think that's like what we're saying is that, and think about that home in this fictitious Disney world, but all of the energy that it sounds like all the energy that all these different things take. If your doggy door opens or whatever automatically and has a hinge and electrical circuit connected to it, like we're basically increasing the amount of energy we're consuming to get this convenience. It sounds like the smart home probably will consume more energy.
But also that it's inevitable, right? Because the Internet of Things is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's like this.
The main issue for sales right now is just convincing the people that it's cheaper. Like the barrier of entry isn't even the technology; it's convincing people that it's not a rich person's tool.
Sure. Okay.
That it's something everybody can afford.
That's actually that basically
Everybody. Who do you talk
that entire point.
Sorry.
That entire point is part of the point of the paper, or the essay, which is that it's like the true cost of what this is difficult to quantify and it's difficult to measure, and they aren't concluding anything one way or one way or another. I don't think they're making any hard conclusions, but they do definitely shine a different light on it, so part of the focus is their focus is on society's scale of things. So not whether it's cheap for a household or maybe even a city or whatever, but what's happening to the world as a whole. And they describe the modern capitalism as having this philosophy or behavior of extractivism, where basically making money is kind of about extracting value from the environment. You're extracting resources from the planet, you're extracting data from the human population, you're extracting labor from the human population, and you're also extracting monetary value from things from practices that had previously been value neutral, right? So just a simple thing talking to someone, having a conversation with someone, or communicating with someone used to be, that relatively value neutral. That wasn't a commercial practice. But now with Facebook and advertising and everything, it's all part of this commercial system now. So
I have a question about that, because basically one idea, right now I was thinking, okay, here we all are, and we're transmitting a lot of data to communicate, and this is a lot more than we would consume energy-wise if we all lived near each other and came to the community center and had this discussion. But then I forgot also that it's cheaper than if we all traveled and took planes to the same location, and the same like a TwitchCon and those kinds of things. So I guess one question is, are there unforeseen savings that, even though we're relying more on technology because it's getting better and more higher fidelity, I guess we don't know exactly what it's going to look like a long time in the future.
I think so. Yeah. And the way these things could pay off later on, we can't really see, and it's really hard to quantify something like this. We're all in our different rooms consuming a lot of energy, but would we also would we save that much energy if we just talk to each other over the phone? But then that wouldn't actually happen because we'd never meet each other in the first place, and that sort of thing is why
Yes.
This isn't a quantification problem. It's or at least not entirely. You can't getting numbers involved is really, really hard because you can't measure a bunch of this stuff. So that makes sense. But basically, extraction is kind of the name of the game when it comes to what kind of the commercial kind of environment is doing right now. And speaking of extracting value from human practices, this is a diagram of a device that was invented in 1673 by Athanasius Kircher, and basically it was called a talking statue. And what you have here is a nobleman's house, and against the wall is a statue, and through the mouth, the nobleman can listen to a bunch of information coming in, and can listen to kind of information about his town, and basically extracting data from his environment. And the statue is connected. It's the same principle as what are those called, like an ear horn or whatever. Like you basically can pull, it takes the sound. It has this big opening here, and it takes the sound from the town square or the avenue or wherever, and is piping it into the noblemen's homes, and then whoever is rich enough to afford this system basically gets to hear all of the information that is going around here. They basically get to collect all of the info that people are just going about their daily lives and just chattering, and then they can take that information and they can use it, however they see fit.
So
and they
that's
draw this parallel, obviously, to data collection,
so it's like
any
like
any
an
cloud.
it's like an early version of the interrogation room or something.
Well, not exactly, because they're not interrogating anyone; they're just listening.
It
In
also sounds like
similar
resources
ways.
are scaling, right? It's like from the resource scaling from the nobleman to everyone else. It seems like it takes a lot of energy and people to create that.
Right.
This talking
Yeah.
statue, basically. It's like to him, it's like this, oh, cool, talking statue, like in Alexa. But actually, if you look at the cost of all the batteries that are on the server rack that are running the algorithms or whatever, or whatever these things are, that there's actual other costs that the nobleman's not perceiving because it's just a statue that's talking. So to them, it's like this cool little thing, but look at all the.
I think in this case too, and if we look at other technologies beyond the Amazon Echo, things like Google or basically any system that receives audio data, any device that you talk to, depending on their practices, are going to basically extract as much value from that as they can. And so the rich noblemen are basically the stakeholders of these technology companies that are gathering all this information. I mean, Google's a really good example of just this behemoth of information that it's extracting from the environment, and that information gets funneled to very, very specific, very, very limited places. We don't all get access to the information that Google gathers about the Earth and about people. So it's funneled to a very very narrow population. Catapult.
Yeah, like you were saying, another example would be like in the early days of the telephone. Every little town had an operator, and she used to take a phone call would come in. She had to take the thing, talk to the person, and say, "Who do you want to talk to?" And then patch her into that house. But she could listen in to all the calls. So basically, the operator knew everything about everybody in the town, kind of thing. But what scares the crap out of me is like these Googles and Alexa and all that, they're always listening, so you don't know what they're listening to. I mean, you could say something just out of context or whatever, and all of a sudden she'll report you to, he's going to kill the president, just because you said the guy's an asshole, he needs to die, or something like that. But I mean, just a weird scenario I just came up with is, you and your wife are making out, and Alexa's listening in and whatnot, and she gets jealous, she gets too smart, she gets jealous and burns your toast the next morning. But that's my 2 bits.
I think that's a really good point, because I think like Alexa or these kinds of things, like people say, well, your phones have your phones have mics and stuff like that. So your computer has a mic and things like that. So why, if people wanted to listen, they could. That's true, but you're limiting the number of parties probably that are listening, and the number of parties that are able to listen through those means are different than the number of parties with all these Internet of Things devices that have low internet security that people are able to actually hack into or overcome. So it's not just there's a lot of actors who could be listening to those things. But I see Lyco and I see Arzouz. You have another comment as well, so maybe Lyco and then Arzouz, if you want to come line up behind Lyco, and we can go after him, and then we can
What I'm saying might be controversial, but they say that I don't know what I mean. For my case, the problem is that what will they do with their information? What happens if they listen to us? What happens if they listen to the things that we're going to do or what are we going to say? Honestly.
Well, they're gonna take that information and they're gonna do what benefits them. For instance,
Like,
someone like Amazon might listen to you, and they're not gonna care what you do, except that they're gonna pay attention to what you're buying, right? Because they sell things and they want to sell things to you, and so basically, I mean, you can kind of expect these entities to do with the information what will benefit them to do with
Yeah.
it.
I can give you an
and-
example. Like I can give you an example of what they do. They'll pay attention to users in your area, and depending on like if they start tweeting out or saying like I feel sick or whatever, they know what area that you're tweeting that out in, so they know what roughly the influenza is like spreading throughout, and it's really a shame because they could give this to the medical community, but they don't. They give it to NyQuil. So NyQuil knows where to target selected their audience. So then, if you start kind of feeling a little sick, you'll start seeing NyQuil ads because they know that the flu is in your area, and you statistically probably have caught it, and then you get on the internet because you're feeling like low, or you get on the internet at an unusual time because you're feeling sick, and then you start seeing NyQuil ads.
There's another example is when women become pregnant, the sphere of advertising becomes aware of it extremely quickly and starts advertising to that. Basically, they just grab whatever piece of information they can to find out stuff like that.
Even then, there's been reports of people being near their like Amazon Echo and stuff and saying like, "Hey, I'm feeling like Hardee's today," and then suddenly, Hardee's ads start showing up on Facebook and stuff.
Yeah. It's
Lyko, did you have something else to say? Oh.
well,
Crash.
thanks for
Oof.
coming. Yeah,
Incredibly convenient eat.
Okay, Arzu?
Looks like his Amazon didn't like
Yeah.
what he was
No,
doing.
that was more or less what I was gonna say. Is there's a reason that if you talk around your equipment and stuff, and not only that, but you're also your GPS on the phone, things like that. Like if you stop by McDonald's, you're gonna see McDonald's ads on places because, as you said, it benefits them. It is advertising data. It is a very lucrative version of it.
Right. And that is a part of that's a huge chunk of this essay as well. And one of the things they talk about is how the human in this scenario plays lots and lots of different roles. So, on one hand, they're a consumer and they're purchasing these things. Basically, they're ultimately providing the money that funds all of these endeavors. But they're also they're also a data resource because they are providing information just through their behavior, so through their purchasing patterns, through who they talk to in the case of a social network, who they talk to, when they talk to them, what they're doing, with whom, where they're going, that sort of thing. In that case, they are data resource that they are basically providing value to the system. They are also sometimes they perform digital labor, either paid or unpaid. A good example is, I think the essay brings it up, is the CAPTCHA system. Have you ever done one of those where you have to click on a picture of a motorcycle or the pictures of the storefront or whatever? Yeah, and those are being used to train machine data systems.
Yeah, I'm curious if we can ask. Or I don't know if you think that this is the case, or if you guys think this is the case that more often, at least I am getting more difficult captures. I feel like I feel like the identify the bus, identify the stop sign, but it's sometimes I don't know if I'm correct. I don't know.
It used to be easier, and it's gotten harder.
I want to vote. Can we up? If you guys think that it's gotten harder for you,
I've got a saying on that.
Okay,
hold
so
on 1 sec,
we'll get to you in just a second. Okay, so
Yeah.
upvote if those questions are getting more difficult, and downvote
Maybe
if
just getting,
they're staying the
slower.
same, or So maybe Psych's just getting the hard ones
Yeah.
for whatever reason.
Yeah.
They're like, oh,
Wow,
we'll see
so
what Psych
people-
really
yeah.
knows.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. So it
Kinda
seems
half
like
and
about
half for
half
this
or
one
something.
too.
A little more
Yeah.
than half. Yeah.
All right, Pika.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting.
Captcha system is actually just like an evolutionary warfare between spam bots and actual like human beings, you know, in the captcha system itself. At first, when it was just like click here to prove that you're not a robot, what it actually does, it's actually looking as your mouse goes over the box, it looks for your mouse movements and you click on the mouse. So then that's where it verifies that you're human. Those can be simulated.
Yeah.
Then the
Anyone
spam
who
bots
plays
start
RuneScape
simulating
knows
that.
you know?
Yeah, so the spam bots started simulating that, so they had to advance into these picture formats or what these weird pictures where they could. But now imagery recognition technology and that stuff in the spam bots are also getting better at recognizing image recognition. So then they have to evolve again, and that's why they seem to be getting harder and harder, becoming more obscure.
Okay, yeah, that
That's
makes sense.
interesting.
And
So where are we
I
going?
kinda
I mean, are we
disagree
going to
with that.
eventually have like you're going to have like an in-depth like AI pop up that you have a conversation
Okay.
with, and they're evaluating whether you're human. To, like,
That could
you know,
happen
sign up
in the
for
near
dominance
future.
Hold on.
delivery or something.
oh boy, what was it?
Yeah.
What were you
I
saying?
think I disagree with that
Interesting.
theory.
That's interesting.
You're totally right about the first version of that "Are you not a robot" thing that Google has was like checking your mouse movement, how much you scrolled the page, a bunch of inputs that just look organic from a human. But the additions that they've been adding, I don't know if it's necessarily just because that stuff's being tricked. It's because Google's getting more information from you to train their AI systems. So those images that they're sending you are from Google Images or from Google Street View or similar places, or from their self-driving car data, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you're helping it learn like what a street stoplight looks like, what cars look like, what storefronts look like,
Yeah, stop sign.
identifying what the numbers
Right,
on
so-
doors are. And
But I think both of these things are true, right? Because spam bots are like they're constantly a threat or whatever. But also, as long as they're being security well, they might as well get something out of it. You know,
Right.
they might as well,
I guess
get minor human labor out of a couple clicks that they have to do anyway because they're doing a captcha, right?
yeah,
I guess a question.
yeah.
I think a question
Yeah.
outweigh what you're saying too, though. I think a question here is that, but is the security have the bots become sophisticated enough to require the stop signs and identifying the tasks that we're doing right now, or is it that Google's trying to take advantage of the human input and like, kind of maximize?
Yeah, that's.
I guess that's a question.
That's
I've
the
wondered
question.
about.
Yeah, and I don't know how to answer that. I think someone inside, like who knows the scenario really well, would have to answer that.
Yeah, I see
Were you
fail.
pointing at
I see an explanation point.
I was just wondering, if they were getting us to train the machines of how to get pictures of the correct things, how does it know that when we're wrong? Because I always get them wrong because I'm not
That's
sure
a
whether
good
it's
point.
in the
Just
corner.
It is evaluating
honestly-
what that's it.
It's just through numbers, right? So like, yeah, maybe you'll get it wrong, but you'll be part of a minority who will get it wrong. And so basically, they just go on statistics in that regard, knowing
Yeah,
that
it's
some
sample
people
size.
are not going
that's
to get
true.
it right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They've got the largest sample size.
Hmm.
Yeah, you can have a normal like a distribution of the clicks or something, and that's why they probably divided into squares, because they're seeing what the distribution of clicks is, and then they can see what the stop sign is.
Oh, yeah,
or
yeah.
something. Interesting.
Um. Right. So okay. So all these roles. That's one of our roles as digital labor. That we are performing for these intelligent systems, so they can get smarter and smarter and smarter. And then there's also, of course, the paid physical and mental labor. So whatever you do for your job, or the people who actually like physically extract the minerals that are used to build these systems and everything. And so they're playing those roles as well, in all of this. Okay, so this is just the poster. But basically, like the idea is that one of the ideas that they bring to the table is that there's like standard consumer technology, and then there's artificial intelligence and cloud technology. And the thing about standard consumer technology or any standard consumer product is that it's built to provide a service to the consumer, but then when the product or the thing being created, I guess, is artificial intelligence, they are consuming just this vast amount of human knowledge across the entire scope of human history. They're taking all of the knowledge, they're taking all of the human behavior that we have, and basically every value, extracted value that our planet and our history can provide, and all of that is going into the artificial intelligence system. So it's not this single context item. It is the entire resources of the entire planet, including physical, mental, and including us. Like that all goes into these artificial intelligence systems. So I think an important question there is like, we talked about how this is impossible to measure, but is it possible that it's actually consuming more resources than it outputs? One of the things that we haven't really touched heavily on here, but the essay does, is the actual geological extraction and the cost on the environment and the what's being pulled from the environment.
Batteries and stuff like that.
Yeah. A single iPhone contains 75 elements. You know, the element periodic table? A single iPhone contains 75 of those, which is about 2/3 of the entire periodic table. And these are non-renewable resources. Obviously, these are metals that we can't create. Our planet has a limited supply, and they're all being pulled out of the earth in very specific locations. Like they talked about how tin comes from very limited sites and is extracted from the environment in those very limited sites to completely destroy the environment there. And I think that's kind of the story for a lot of different metals, not to mention all the waste disposal and pollution. And I think they also said that they were talking about Apple products, and they said that each component, basically for all the components of Apple products to go into them, different materials and products have to go through 750 manufacturers and distributors to actually get to the assembly line where it's actually assembled. So anyway, so basically there's a lot going on here, planet globally, that contributes to these systems that are just such a convenience. What do you think, Psych? Are they providing as much service?
I mean, that's fascinating. No, I mean that's exact. I mean, I think and when you're talking about that, I'm thinking about the animal agriculture industry, because I'm thinking about how you're talking about how there's this excess amount of energy that's used for things that we're just holding like an iPhone, and we're not thinking about that. And I just watched this interview with Professor Chris Hedges, and he talked about veganism and how that's the biggest way to impact the environment is to go vegan. And he talked about, he went into the animal agriculture industry and raising all these cattle and the pigs and stuff like that, and feeding them, and then feeding us with their meat as opposed to just feeding us directly and raising crops. And he talked about climate change and the growing population and how it's really an unsustainable model. And this seems like another example of that, where we're using Alexa,
this energy has to go somewhere.
We're consuming a lot more than we realize.
Waste and one of the other cool things they kind of brought up a little bit was how consumer products and artificial intelligence are very similar in that they're both black boxes. You buy an item at the store and you take it and you open it and you see it there, but you don't see everything that went into it and all the resources that were involved in producing it. And in the same way, artificial intelligence is, especially more and more, you can't see what's going on behind the scenes. And even the people that can, can't always see behind the scenes depending on the type of technology that they're using. Because if the machine is training itself on something, then it's going to just, create its own algorithms to solve its problems. And anyway, so that's another pattern
Yes.
that we see too
Yeah.
is how much of it is
And-
invisible.
Ghoster, I saw that you had a.
Mike, okay. So one thing I wanted to point out too was that, you know, Pope, about how you're saying right now it's consuming more resources than it's actually putting out. One thing you have to think about is because it's still in its infancy, just like a human child, they consume so much stuff, and yet they give very little. I mean, yeah, they give a
Right.
learning experience, but to the parents, but that's it. It's right now, AI and all that stuff is so young that we're having to constantly feed it, constantly give it new stimulus and input and everything, and food and energy and all this stuff
I love that.
to get it to grow up to a point where, let's say, I don't know, like a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old in human years would be able to start giving you stuff back. Like, oh, you want to do a math calculation? Well, they can do simple addition now, or maybe even basic multiplication. It's we have to let it grow, and I do.
I
And
really
chores.
I
They
really
can
like that
start
comparison
vacuuming.
because it's true. Like, in order for our AI to get more sophisticated than they are now, you know, we do need to put money into it and resources into it and everything. And I personally, like, just I think that, like, as you know, we have a connection with technology. Like, we facilitate each other, humans and technology, right? Like, the more technology, the more sophisticated we make our technology, the more it makes us flourish. And then it just is this relationship over time that has been that way since humans first made fire.
And I love that idea. I love that idea too. Of the fact that we're like creating the AI, because my mentor, he's like talked about. He's a professor in psychology, and he's talked about how evolution. He's all interested in evolution, and he talked about how we're going to be the one. Like, evolution always exists, such that we create the next iterate. Like, we're the most evolved species. We're going to create the next iteration of the next most evolved species. And so I like that idea of like those are what you just mentioned, of the idea that we're nurturing this thing and creating it. It's like we're building the next evolved
like, this
generation,
is our
especially.
progeny,
And it
we're,
makes sense
you know,
too.
we're
I think
investing in it.
with climate change, I think potentially it makes sense that we're going to have to adapt in certain extreme ways, that, you know, maybe that'll be a way that we are able to survive further into the future, even if it's hundreds of years from now.
Maybe they'll help us with that later on.
Or we will become, you know, that's what, you know, the transhumanism kind of like, you know, we might become that. That'll be the next evolution of species. But Verona, I also saw that you had a exclamation point emoji.
Yeah, I was gonna say I understand cameraman's analogy, but what is it in that analogy that technology would end up giving us back? Because we were talking about it like it being using a lot of non-renewable resources, so it can't give us back the resources, can it? Or do we just recycle them?
I mean, sure, it
just
can.
gives us.
Go to space.
Oh, there we go. Asteroid mining, I guess.
You could,
Yeah.
if you have human intelligence that's able to withstand radiation up in space, it could mine the asteroids.
So I could just go to space, bring more metals, and then you have just a solar system of resources at our disposal.
It's a good note of caution, though, because, like, from a very real perspective, like, the result of all of our technological progression at this point is the result where we basically we're able to consume more resources. Like, we put all these resources into being able to consume more resources. So it.
You ever heard of a Dyson swarm?
What?
Sphere.
Dyson sphere?
It would be a Dyson swarm.
Wait, what is this? What is this? I don't know.
Like one civilization.
Okay, so we receive only how much percent of the sun's energy? Like a very, very minute part.
Yeah, we're talking about a Dyson sphere.
So if we could collect all of the energy that radiates out, you know, to space, we could use it towards something. and
Yes.
so it'd be like a swarm of miniature satellites.
That's
that collected.
Yeah. That's one of the theories for why maybe we haven't found extraterrestrial life out there in the stars, is that they are dark because they've built a resource extraction around their solar system that prohibits, stops much observation from happening inside of it.
Interesting.
Dark Kirby?
I saw it. Yeah, dark and then fail. That's all you guys had.
Yeah, I just had a point about something brought up about kind of like the output of all this stuff is I kind of like to see technology as how humans evolve. Like evolution through biology happens over a course of a lot of time, but kind of what we're doing, what separates us from a lot of animals, is technology, things like tools. And I like to think that by advancing our AI, we'll begin to process into, again, sort of like transhumanism, things like cybernetics and like uploading our memory and personality and stuff onto computers, things like that, to sustain more biologically and in some physical sense, rather than having to consume the environment over and over.
Dude, I'm all down for conscious uploading.
We already do. We also already do that, but like, I mean, we all store, we have reminders, we have Google Drive, all those kinds of things.
Exactly.
We're taking our cognition
So
and putting it on the
next
internet. I mean, we're
progression, right?
Yeah, we've already done it. That's interesting to think that, and this comes back to what goes to what you were saying about like, this is the, by another alternative to the idea that the infancy of the adult that's going to become, it's like, this is, we've already started to evolve with technology essentially, and it's existed for, since the Industrial Revolution, I guess, essentially.
But we also don't want to destroy our planet in the process. Like, if we make Earth uninhabitable, like, that'll be a huge tragedy. And I know, but like, we want to avoid tragedy while we're getting to all these cool, future places. I think. I don't know.
I guess.
Fail?
Oh, I'd just like to add to is that you mentioned that Latent swarms could be a possible solution to the Fermi paradox about how we can't find aliens anywhere. I'd like to add that is busted, since you could block all the visible light around the star, but then it will still radiate infrared through black body radiation. So, yeah.
That's true.
Unless I've been looking in the wrong places.
We don't have the technology to view that far in space.
Oh, we have infrared satellites like everywhere.
So that, I mean, I love this topic, but it is a completely different topic, and we should revisit it again at some point.
Yes.
Because we've talked about it before, but not thoroughly enough. Okay. Oh yeah, and so final questions: are we consuming more than we're providing? I guess, and that's also a time-based question, right? Right now, we could be consuming more than, or the AI systems could be consuming more than they're providing, but then later on it might actually pay off. But
Maybe let's do a poll.
we've got.
What we think's gonna happen.
Okay, so let's.
Yeah. You think we're gonna eventually?
See,
Well, so thumbs up would be like thumbs up if you think that we are going to or I guess this is thumbs up. Well, the thumbs up is a more positive one. Thumbs up is if you think that we are going to somehow technology will facilitate a shift in the amount of resources that we're using, and it'll decrease over time. And thumbs down if you think we're going to continue to use more and more resources, and that we're just going to continue.
And it will eventually lead to a destructive end. If you think, I don't know, I'm pretty divided on
something
it.
in the middle. I think we're going to consume more resources, but it's not going to destroy us.
Ooh, that is true too.
Okay.
I guess
Isn't that what
that's
the
all
whole
about
space thing was about? Like expanding to space thing?
That's true. Yeah, you could be consuming more resources.
I think we'll learn how to fabricate the same resources.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be great. We need to know how to fuse atoms without causing a bomb.
Forgetting about the greed of man. What we want is everything within our sight. We're gonna eventually want everything in the solar system, and we're just gonna use all that up.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean,
we go to Alpha Centauri. That's why.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
The greed.
That'll be our.
Not if it's an AI
that'll be our
robot.
plan. We'll just conquer
Extracting resources for
everything,
us.
Yes.
and then we'll have triumphed. I hope that's not kind of our.
And so also, I'm really
ending.
impressed, Bobo, because this essay was like, how long was? I mean, how many pages? Because I went to start reading it, and then how many? It is really. It's very
pretty
in-depth,
long, but
really
it's
cool.
like it's
almost a book.
It's cut into smaller sections, right? So like each section is easy to read and it's kind of self-contained. So like even if you don't read the whole thing, just go check out a section or two because Yeah,
this is
like
awesome.
it's
'cause
not
you've been-
really
you've
that
been-
hard. It's just very dense.
You've been
I've got a question.
summarizing it like so well and stuff, and I think I'm curious if there's any additional things that we might need to learn, or any last things that you wanted to bring up.
I have
before-
a question about the paper. Does it ever okay, so currently like AI and all this stuff, it needs to be like fed in stuff, and also be like programmed by programs. Does it mention anything about self-replicating AI?
No, and it doesn't, and that's also I don't think something that is really on the horizon yet for AI,
Okay.
right? Like,
That's the next paper.
that would be that's the
Yeah,
next paper.
yeah, the next
that would be when it
grandchild, yeah.
really. It seems to me like that's when it would really start to become artificial life in a form that we kind of understand a bit better. Is if it can create additional versions of itself to like start creating its own systems and
Okay.
everything like that.
Okay.
Seems but yeah, so not quite yet. I'll be on the lookout for something like that
Yeah,
though.
but yeah, were there any? This has been an amazing summary of the essay because it was like a really complex. I mean, I was reading it and it's really in depth and stuff, and I didn't get through much of it. But this has been really. So, is there anything as we kind of head towards the end and stuff? Is there anything additional that we didn't talk about, or things that you want to bring up for?
Well, there's a
important
ton of
points
stuff.
I mean, there's so many. I'm sure.
Yeah, like there is a ton of stuff in the essay that I didn't talk about, and the kind of the humanitarian concern about like all of the labor that goes into this is kind of a big focus, as well as the environmental effect. And we could definitely go on about that, and it is worthwhile to think about. But basically, I don't know, like I think it's like I am a technologist or futurist or whatever. Like I want technology to progress, and like that's my professional field now and everything. So like I'm really into it, and I'm really scared that we're gonna just be irresponsible. Like we don't know how to be mature enough as a species to be responsible, but I feel like the only way we can get there is to get as much knowledge about all these issues as we can, and to think about the systems that is happening, to like think about this on a global level, because like we can't ignore the fact that we're a global collective presence anymore. We're not the all the things that divide us, like land borders and commercial borders and all those different things, like those are getting increasingly shallow just as we get access to more of our planet. So anyway, that's something that I'm really happy about this publication being out there, and I hope there's more.
Yeah, it's very thought-provoking. Yeah, did anyone have any last thoughts or anything like that before we wrap up?
Xeri?
Yeah,
and then if
I've looked into artificial intelligence, and I found out there are two ways we can form a super intelligence one. One is building up and one is building down. We are only capable of building down because we only can give it processes that only we know how to solve. So if we were able to build up, it would solve its own problems.
Yes.
But we don't have the kind of technology for them to problem solve on their own with common sense in the matter.
If we can teach them how to be creative, like that will change things, I think, in a really big way. So who knows? Okay, it's Verona.
I guess I could kind of spin off of what he said, and it might be a little bit off topic to the paper here, but I remember a question that I asked a long time ago, and it popped up in my head again. What point do you stop calling it artificial intelligence and just calling it artificial consciousness or life?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what if it wants
When you
citizenship
stop
one day?
calling it artificial.
As soon as it tells us to.
10 out of 10.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, I like that. I like that.
Bill effects. I saw you had an
Programs
exclamation
never
point.
tell us.
Emoji. Bill effects.
I don't know if we can hear you.
Yeah, we can. I think you might be muted, or
He's trying to figure out his mic.
okay.
Okay,
Well, if your mic comes back on, use the exclamation point. Yeah, but yeah. No, this is. I think it's very interesting, at least for me, because I think you captured like what you know, you highlighted something that I think at least I didn't realize in my own life about, I don't know, using Alexa. And I don't have an Alexa, but I did have one at one point, and then I
You
actually
tried
returned
for a
it after I
second.
was- Yeah,
Because
I
you were
was like,
creeped out by it?
basically, yeah, because it was in my living room, and then I was in my bedroom. I mean, I live in like a one-bedroom apartment, and then I was in bed, and it was in my living room, like really far away, and I whispered, I was like, and it lit up, and then I had to return it. I mean, I was just like, how the fuck did it hear me from so far away? And I was like, no,
Yeah.
I can't. It was too creepy for me, I guess. The blue,
It was
this light.
too convenient. It was
yeah.
just too much. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, in the.
I hope. I don't know. Like, I hope it's the harbinger of good things, and it's not just. You know, I kind of hope that it's not just convenience we're after, but like a better way of organizing the world, and hopefully we can develop intelligence that will be our ally in that. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shouldn't it. Shouldn't be convenience be part of the future as well?
Well, sure. But if that's our only goal, then we're going to basically have the system that we have now, where rich people get the most convenient things possible, and then we've got children mining in indentured slave labor to mine the minerals that are used for that. Which I don't
It won't
think
be possible. It won't be possible because of the government. Okay, will be impossible. Okay.
Yeah.
It will never happen.
Interesting. Well, we should talk. Yeah, that's a.
Anything's
No,
possible in the
that does
future.
happen. Like, that's a real
possible.
thing. Like people are treated in very inhumane ways all over the globe. So like, it's not it.
It already happens with
depending
these
on-
batteries
depending on where you
mined.
live.
It's
It
an
already happens.
unfortunate
It happens now.
it's an unfortunate thing is that the place where you can get the materials the cheapest is the place also with the fewer labor laws, and thus
exactly.
are the harsh conditions of the people mining the very dangerous
yeah.
materials.
China.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're not the only
Africa.
ones.
No,
And-
it's mostly a lot of it's in Africa actually.
Yeah, Africa.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
well the
In
biggest
Africa.
big thing about all the
Indonesia?
smartphones being made is the iridium for the touchscreens that are being put in. There's only a finite amount of iridium, and there's no recyclable method that's been come up with to extract the iridium from the touchscreens itself. Like if you can recycle almost every part of the phone. Yeah, and iridium is needed to get the touchscreens to work. So when that runs out, like it's gonna be, by touchscreens, just voice command. I mean, I guess.
I think the material is it's indium. It's indium tin oxide is the transparent but conductive layer used in touchscreen
Oh, indium.
displays.
Okay, yeah.
Indium.
Indium.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
There
get my
are
element names
alternatives,
mixed up.
but they're not as good. Like silver
Yeah.
nanowires.
Wow.
They block.
Thanks.
more light.
That's really. I think. Yeah. Thanks, guys. That's really interesting.
I think something interesting to take from
And
this
we'll get to history.
is, that like this isn't the best way we could be doing things, right? Like it's inefficient. We're putting a lot of resources in for a very, very narrow range of benefit. But that also the scale of what's happening here is also extremely impressive. Like the scale of what humans can actually accomplish. It's not been being done the most efficient way, but it's also enormous and it's really impressive. And so, if we find a good system, it could improve itself, and it could, could become something better.
I like that.
All right, Ghoster.
Ghoster, you want to close us out? Our amazing cameraman, who's always here.
Yes.
Like every
Yes,
time.
thank you, Ghoster.
It's
Thank you very
amazing.
much.
I do have to ask one question like we should have been doing for the past who knows how many shows since Lousy's not here. How will these AIs get rid of teledonics?
Teledonics.
Wait, get rid of them? No.
Yeah, because they're going to be controlling them.
They're gonna. Oh, there we go. Yeah. How are they going to help us with that?
How is teledonics
really
going to
the-
help you get off today? Back to you.
Oh my god.
All right. I think,
well, we
I
have
think
talked about an
that,
episode of doing that, so maybe we will one
Yes,
day.
hopefully soon. Okay.
But yeah,
All
well,
right,
thanks guys.
everyone.
This was a fascinating conversation.
Um,
Thanks,
You too.
Coco, for the
Yeah.
awesome slideshow.
Let's do a photo.
Let's do a group photo. Yes, Ghoster will take the photo.
Hi, PCO.
Yay!
This is
Should we
good.
go there?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, guys. You guys,
your
the discussion
body-
was fascinating.
Your body is so broken.
Oh, where?
I
Your
see your legs
foot has
stretching
been
all over
broken
the
this
place.
whole time.
Yeah,
Oh,
your legs
where?
are all broken.
It just
I'm
hasn't been
messaging
working.
you on
It's
Oh,
your
let
right
me-
How
foot.
you doing?
Let me
You
reload
need
my
all the small
avatar.
people in the front and all the tall people in the back.
Oh
Let me
man,
reload my avatar.
thanks for sleeping.
Alright, let me load back into my doggo.
All right.
I messaged
Should
you
we
on
say the
Discord.
name of our preferred electronic assistant?
Google it is.
Got mine right here.
Nah, man, I'm going
Call
Alexa.
Pop Topo.
Go for Alexa.
Alexa's my wife, though.
Oh my god, that's Alexa model though.
Come on.
Hey, Dingus.
Censored!
Google.
Censored.
Copyright.
Love it. Yay!
Trademarked. DMCA.
Cool. All right, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. That was a
What
fascinating
did you say?
Thank you all. This was a really fun episode.
Ahoy, Dingus.
Yeah, it was nice listening up here.
Is that a custom wake word for something?
I'm getting told
Come
about
on,
my
like I said,
Discord.
I'm
Julian
to
actually
I made a
learned
really
how to
nice,
use
I
it
made like a
instead of
really
the real
nice
things,
wall
but I'm
vector and
just
then
like-
using like
Did I
Maya for
fall?
like animating,
Perfect,
and I
yeah.
just
Yeah.
finished it, and I just
Bye,
haven't gotten around to
guys.
like using it and stuff.
I've been stuck on
There
the
we
couch
go.
all day. My back went out.
Small again.
Oh wow,
Nice.
Wait,
what happened?
are you
Yeah.
the person who made the VR chat movie?
That's a new shirt.
Kidding me.
I'm
yeah.
in it. The documentary
Serial
coming up.
Games playing
The wider screen.
like the Navi computer.
I want to see that. I still haven't seen it.
When's it coming out? I don't know.
Watch it.
I'm not the.
I've been